Hello and welcome to Wagner's Tech Talk. Today we're going to talk about a cool utility for your Raspberry Pi 4 or 400 called Berryboot. It boots up from a microSD, but then you can use an SSD to install Ubuntu, TwisterOS, PiOS, and many more. Let's check it out right now. Let's quickly go over a few things you'll need. A Raspberry Pi 4 or 400 with a power adapter, a keyboard, mouse, and display, a microSD card, an external USB or hard drive or SSD is recommended, though not required, and you will need the microSD card to boot. You may still be wondering, what is Berryboot and what can it do for me? Well, it's a simple operating system installer and boot selection utility to allow launching multiple Linux distributions from a single SD or SSD. The installation is very easy. Just go to berryboot.com and it will take you to this website, which provides the installer as well as a lot of helpful information and advanced ways of using the utility. To download it, simply click this link, which at the present time is only 45 megabytes and won't take very long to download. You'll be redirected to the sourceforge.net page, and the download completes. All you have to do is right-click. I'm going to use 7-zip from 7zip.org to extract the files. Let's take a look at the microSD card that I'm going to install it to. It's a FAT32. It's 128 gigs. And I'm going to go ahead and select all the files and simply copy them over to the root of the microSD card. Once the copy operation has completed, simply right-click the microSD card and select Eject. Now I could install all the operating systems to the microSD card itself, but I want to use this 1TB SanDisk SSD. So I'm simply going to connect it up and attach this USB-C to USB Type-A adapter, plug in the micro HDMI and now the SSD itself. While this looks like a Raspberry Pi 400, it's not. It's a keyboard and mouse, and I'm going to plug that into a USB 2.0 port. I'm going to take the Berryboot microSD and go ahead and put it in the Raspberry Pi 4 and apply power, and we are now ready to check out Berryboot and install some operating systems. And now Berryboot will go ahead and start up. And the first thing it's going to ask you is if you see a green border, and we do, so I'm going to leave that at yes, which is to disable overscan. Next, it's going to ask us for our network connection. I'm going to use Wi-Fi. You can use hardwire if you prefer. I'm going to select the time zone. The country was automatically populated. And a little block here to test out the keyboard, make sure all the keys are correct, and yeah, everything looks pretty good. So we'll go ahead and click OK. And now it's going to ask us to connect up to our network. So I'm going to select mine, which is Lucas, and enter the password for my Wi-Fi network and click OK. Next, you'll be prompted for where you want to install your operating systems. I'm going to select the SDA Extreme SSD. However, there are some interesting options for network storage. Checking out the Berryboot website at the very bottom, if you right-click here, it'll show you that there's a way to store these files on a Synology NAS. If you're interested, let me know in the comments below. We might do that in a future video. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and format the SSD card. If you get this error, don't be too concerned. Just go ahead and close out the dialog. You will then see the main operating system selection screen, and you can pick from any of these in the list, such as PiOS, and these are 64-bit versions, Ubuntu, and Manjaro, and OpenSUSE. If we click Appliances, we've got one selection over here. We'll go ahead and go back to the Popular tab, and go ahead and select Ubuntu. When we click the OK button, Berryboot will go out to the internet and download the distribution for us, which is very handy. Once the download has completed, you will now have Ubuntu as an option in your selection. But before we can use it, let's go ahead and click Exit and allow Berryboot to reboot. Once rebooted, now you have the option to select Ubuntu. After a period of time, it'll automatically boot into the operating system, or you can click the boot button. And now Ubuntu has started up. At this point, you basically go through the setup of Ubuntu. So you go ahead and select your language, and I'm going to go ahead and select English and click continue. And then we'll go ahead and fast forward through the rest of this because this is not a video of how to install Ubuntu, right? And we'll quickly check out the network connection. We'll launch Firefox and go to wagnerstechtalk.com and just make sure everything's good and the page loaded. Now we'll go ahead and close out of the browser and restart Ubuntu and boot back into Berryboot, and I'll show you how to install some operating systems that aren't on the list. Back on my Windows 10 PC, we'll go to this website. I'll put links down below to make it easier for you. Here you'll find a listing of a number of operating systems that are highly compressed and simplify the installation of Berryboot. I'm going to pick TwisterOS version 1.97 for the Raspberry Pi 4 and go ahead and click the Download OS image. Again, we'll go back over to sourceforge.net, and in just a moment it'll begin the download. And while we're here, we'll go ahead and pick a different operating system, perhaps Raspberry Pi OS Desktop Full for the Raspberry Pi 2, 3, and 4. Again, we'll go to the sourceforge.net website, and the download will begin. Once everything's downloaded, simply select the files, right-click, and go to 7-zip and extract to here. And now the files will be extracted. And the only files that we really need here are the .img files. So I'm going to select the two .img files that are in the compressed squash fs image file format. And then we'll simply copy those .img files over to a thumb drive. Doesn't matter what size as long as you have enough room on it. And once the copy is complete, simply right-click on the drive itself and select Eject. And now we are ready to install it into our Raspberry Pi. So plug it into a USB 3.0 port, power on the Raspberry Pi, and Berryboot will start up. And now we're going to click the Edit menu, and from here, click and hold the Add OS button and select Copy OS from USB stick. Once you do, select the drive. I'm going to select the TwisterOS and the Open button, and now it'll copy the operating system. We can then click the Exit button and it'll reboot, and once rebooted, you will then see TwisterOS on the list. And from here we can go ahead and click the Boot button and TwisterOS will begin to boot. And from there, we can just go through the setup wizard. I'll just click next through all of this. Update your system. It's always a good idea. And there we go. I'm going to go ahead and change the theme. So I'm going to select that, and we'll pick the Nighthawk theme. And I'll go ahead and hit close and restart. And now the theme has changed to Nighthawk. I'll go ahead and launch RetroPie just so you can see that yes, you can run RetroPie right here in TwisterOS. At this point, everything looks good, so we'll go ahead and log out. We will reboot back into Berryboot, so hit restart. You could select the operating system and click Set Default if you'd rather have that operating system always boot by default. We'll go ahead and copy OS from the USB stick again, and now we're going to pick Raspberry Pi OS. And now that the copy operation is complete, we'll go ahead and click the Exit button and go back into Berryboot. And from here, we'll go ahead and select Raspberry Pi OS and then click the Boot button. And we'll just quickly go through the setup very, very quick. So I'll select my time zone and speed through this so you don't have to watch it all. And once our updates are done, click OK and restart, and we are done. There are a few additional features that I want to make sure I let you know about. If you don't like the name of the operating system, you can rename it, back it up, delete it, and of course, set the default. So I can select Twister, set that as the default, Clicking the Edit Config button will allow you to go in and modify any of the configuration files that you see here, such as the config.txt or command line.txt. You can also go to the More options, and from here you can restore the original image, you can clone an image, you can drop to a console, change the password, or repair the file system. One thing that I was curious to try is, what if I removed the microSD from my Raspberry Pi 4 and put it in the Raspberry Pi 400? I also hooked up the SSD and decided I would go ahead and try it by powering everything on, and of course, everything worked as expected. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. I will be releasing a video soon on the Argon 1 M.2K, so if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And with that, I will talk to you very soon.